Alright guys, hey, welcome to episode 1 of my brand new video blog to coincide with my current blog, in which I'll give you the address to at the end of this. Basically what I do here is I give you my thoughts on music from every decade, every genre. Every week I'm going to be posting up new videos. I'm going to have a segment talking about new releases. I'm going to have a segment in which I compare two albums of a certain artist. I'm going to have a segment in which I stress how awesome some albums and how different some albums sound on vinyl than CDs, as well as give you guys some reviews that come straight from my blog. So, let's get started. Alright guys, so the first album I'm going to be discussing is the new album from The Lonely Island. It's called Turtleneck and Chain. If you guys don't know who the Lonely Island are, it's Andy Samberg from Saturday Night Live and two other writers from Saturday Night Live who are a fake rap group who have released now 2 albums. Their first album came out a few years back. It was called Incredibad. And if you ever get the chance to listen to it, it is awesome, man. I mean, to some it might just seem like a lot of just mocking things, but it's a genius. It's satirical genius when you look at it. They captured the rap culture and techno culture absolutely perfectly on the album, and there really wasn't much of a dull moment on their first album, Incredibad. Now, their new album, Turtleneck and Chain, is no doubt very funny for a good chunk of it. However, it makes me think, there are some points in the album that make me think, are they just going for shock value at this point? I mean, if you listen to, like, the first track on the album, We're Back, it's just a constant barrage of swearing and sexual imagery, and it's just, are they going for shock value? But, you know, it's a shame if that's what they're really going for. However, another thing that gets me is the songs, I hate to say it, they're not as iconic as the songs that we heard on Incredibad. However, the album does absolutely have its funny parts. You know, I Just Had Sex and The Creep are very funny songs, and there are a bunch of other funny ones as well. However, they're not going to hold up to the tracks from Incredibad, like I'm on a Boat and Lazy Sunday. It's not going to add up over time. However, the band did get their act together for the second half of the album. I thought towards the end, the finale was fantastic. When you listen to songs like Throw It on the Ground and No Homo, it's basically Andy Samberg listing things, but the way which doesn't sound funny at all, but they're both hysterical songs and definitely made the album, I thought. Alright guys, so next up I'm going to be taking us back to the early 90s. I'm going to be talking about an album by King's X. It's called Dogman. And basically any fan of any grunge metal, whether it be Nirvana or Pearl Jam, will be a fan, will like this. For the most part though, it's gloomy, it's slow, very powerful music. Fans of Alice in Chains will definitely enjoy almost immediately. I realized that a lot of these songs, they had this great groove to it, you know. I could only compare it to maybe the groove that you would find in Tool songs or Soundgarden. However, I was blown away by the different musical elements I saw throughout the album. You know, grunge music, you know, as iconic as it was, you know, it was very to the point. It was very simple. The music of King's X on this album was really not simple at all. I saw elements of progressive rock. I saw elements of psychedelic rock. I saw a lot going on here. And there wasn't a dull moment. There was just pure power for the whole album. Also, I would like to say as well that the band is only a trio, but they made some unbelievable music on here. And if you go back and look at some of the famous musical trios like Cream and Rush, you know, they were famous for being a smaller band but continuing to make powerful music, and that's exactly what you see here. So in music, you know, the size of the band not necessarily matters. Alright guys, so in the first of my showdown series between two albums, I'm going to be talking about the two newest releases of My Chemical Romance, from their few years ago released of The Black Parade to their newest release, Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys. Now, first, before I start anything, I would like to say that I'm actually a huge fan of both albums, and both are very well crafted. Alright, so let's start with The Black Parade. The Black Parade came out 4 or 5 years ago now, and I was a big fan of it when it came out. You know, I listened to their older album, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, and overall, it's kind of a mess in parts. That's the sad truth. You know, there were a couple of catchy songs, but I don't know. Overall, it wasn't that impressive. On The Black Parade, you see a massive maturation from the band. They really came into just a rock and roll band during this. They had been a punk band for years, but now they were a real rock and roll band. However, the album is still very gloomy. They took that from their older material. They didn't give up on that just yet. Also, may I add, the album over time has been criticized to have elements of Pink Floyd's classic album, The Wall. Now, that could be really good or really bad, you know, whether or not you're a Pink Floyd fan, but I'll let you guys decide on that. Now, their newest release, Danger Days, might not be as rock-oriented as The Black Parade. It's popish. It's definitely popish in parts, but it gives you a completely different feeling than The Black Parade. The truth is, the album Danger Days is so much fun to listen to. It gets you up, it gets you moving, and it's an even further maturation for the band in my eyes. Now, also, I may add, if you've tuned into my Tumblr account before and seen my music blog there, I'm a sucker for gimmick albums that have gimmicks. And on Danger Days, you know, there was the whole fake radio broadcast thing, so I just thought that was nothing short of brilliant. Alright guys, so which one do I think is better? To be honest, I think Danger Days is slightly better. Simply for the part that, you know, it's funner to listen to, the songs are catchy as all hell, and not to mention, the instrumentals, they've matured even further with that. You know, My Chemical Romance for this album just left the whole gloomy thing behind and focused on being nothing short of a rock band. And that's why I think Danger Days is just a little better. Alright guys, next up, the Beastie Boys have a new album. It's their first real album in 7 years. And I say real album because their last album, they have released an album since, but it was completely instrumentals, and a lot of people, I can understand if a lot of people don't like that. But, first thing I want to point out is that since the 80s now, the Beastie Boys have been cranking out just solid rap albums. But, however, you may or may not notice, over the years they've gotten progressively heavier and more toward, even more into the rap genre. While at the beginning they were kind of into like this rap and rock fusion. So, however, this new album called Hot Sauce Committee Part 2, I gotta say, first of all, the funk aspect on the album is like mind-blowing. you're not going to hear me say this often at all, but the rhymes that these guys produced on the album were simply badass. And the album is just fun overall, and absolutely the funnest album they've done since the early 90s, at least in my respect. You know, I don't want to mock their stuff from the 90s, because it was all brilliant and always quirky and funny, but it progressively got heavier. Alright guys, so coming up next, it's the first part in my albums that you really ought to hear on vinyl series, and I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite, if I have to play favorites in alternative albums, I have to talk about the Arcade Fire's Neon Bible album, which is just a classic alternative indie rock release in its own right. And what makes the album just so mind-blowing is how unbelievably powerful it is. I don't know if it's the size of the band or the string section that the band has, but to the CD, if you listen to it on a CD or a computer, it's powerful. Yeah, it's powerful. But if you get the chance to listen to it on vinyl, it is absolutely mind-blowing. Alright guys, wrapping up this week with a classic album by Joy Division. Unknown Pleasures is the name of it. It came out in 1979, so that right there tells you it's one of the very early of the alternative genre releases. The album has a great post-punk sound, maybe similar to maybe Blondie or something else around the post-punk area, but however, it might not be for everybody because it's filled with absolutely gloomy lyrics and over-the-top, highly theatrical vocals. So maybe people won't like that. However, this album is a great example of the awesome era of 80s alternative, and fans of both The Cure and The Smiths will most likely enjoy Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures. Alright guys, so that wraps it up for this week. Be sure to check out my blog. Be sure to check out my page, because I have playlists of a good majority of the music I talk about on here and on my blog. As well as follow me on Twitter. I want to hear what you guys have to say. So, see you guys next week.